back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about 10 horror movies that I highly recommend. And with that, let's get to the list. What's wrong with you? Beezel is a 2024 supernatural horror movie, co-written and directed by Aaron Fradkin. It stars Victoria Fradkin, Nicholas Robin, and Bob Gallagher. Over 60 years, 3 guests of a cursed home discover an eternal witch that lives beneath it, with an insatiable thirst for human souls.
My name is Harold J. Weems. I have been hiding something all of these years. I know exactly who's responsible for the death of my wife.
I had a number of you guys recommend this to me over the last month or so, and I finally got around to checking it out, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is one of my favorite discoveries in a long time. Because besides a couple of you recommending it, no one's talking about this movie, which is part of why it took me a while to even check it out. For one, it's a rental, and I generally don't watch rentals just because they're harder for you guys to be able to watch, so I don't recommend them as often as I would something that's streaming on Netflix or Shudder or Tubi, whatever. But in this case, I think it's absolutely worth a rental cost. But I'm sure it'll drop before too long on one of the streaming services as well. But this movie is so much fun. It's creepy, it's disturbing, it's surprising, the practical effects are well done. It is a very small movie, so you got to keep your expectations in check. But if you go into this expecting just a hidden gem, something that's interesting, then I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Just the whole way this movie is put together is very entertaining. It's hard to even put into words exactly what makes this special. It's partially due to the practical effects. Some of it is the way it's edited together, because some of it is found footage style, but then there's plenty of it that's not. And the way they marry the two works really well. But I had an absolute blast with this creepy little gem, and it's one that I highly, highly recommend.
Wow. Yeah. Trippy.
It's What's Inside is a 2024 comedy sci-fi thriller, written and directed by Greg Jardin. It stars Brittany O'Grady, James Morosini, and Gavin Leatherwood. A pre-wedding party descends into an existential nightmare when an estranged friend shows up with a mysterious suitcase.
If you think of your brain as a hard drive, then this just transfers the files.
Oh my God.
So this is one of the biggest surprises I've had so far this year, because I did not expect to like this movie at all, much less love it. And I absolutely love this movie. It is so entertaining. It's so fun. It is comedic, but not in an overtly comedy kind of way. It's not like they're telling jokes or it's goofy or any of that. It's just situational humor, things that people say in a certain situation that catch you off guard. A lot of it is a dark, black sense of humor. So you got to be a little bit patient with this, especially if you're a little bit older like I am, because it is mostly a young cast, like people in their early 20s right out of college. So it does have a little bit of that almost CW feel to it when it gets going. But if you're patient and wait with it, it's worth it, because it quickly becomes something very different. For one, the dialogue, the way this movie is written is really, really well executed. These feel like real people, real friends, real relationships. The things that people say to each other, the squabbles that couples have in it, everything feels authentic. And I quickly was able to identify with these characters and feel like I've been there. Maybe I'm older than that now, but this feels like things I've experienced. And so because of that, you care about the characters, care about the situation, and quickly you're sucked into this. But when it goes for it, I mean, it goes for it. It gets dark, it gets twisted, very uncomfortable and gruesome at times, but it'll make your head spin because it goes in so many crazy sci-fi-ish types of directions. It gets hard to follow, but in a fun way. And at the end of it, your head is spinning spinning, but you really enjoyed the time you spent with it. So if you're looking for something to not take too serious and have a good time with, I think this is a perfect pick. VHS Beyond is a 2024 found footage sci-fi horror anthology. It's the 7th installment in the VHS franchise and features segments directed by Jordan Downey, Christian and Justin Long, Justin Martinez, Barrett Powell, Kate Segal, and Jade Cheel. 6 tapes unleash horror in a sci-fi inspired hellscape, pushing the boundaries of fear and suspense.
Everything that we thought we knew is called into question.
I talked about this in my last video where I was talking about movies on Shudder, but I wanted to mention it again because I don't think I really expressed how much I enjoyed it and how well done I think it is. It has some of my absolute favorite segments ever in a VHS movie. And like all anthologies, not all the segments are equal. Some are better than others. But I think as far as a low point, even the low points in this are still very entertaining and really interesting and well done. But it's creative, it's thought-provoking, it's gory, it's funny, it's exciting. There's amazing practical effect work, monster, creature feature stuff. It's really got everything that you would want in a sci-fi horror anthology. So if you have yet to see this, I think you absolutely need to put it on your list.
Things have gone bad in the lot now.
Salem's Lot is a 2024 supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Gary Dauberman. It's based on Stephen King's 1975 novel of the same name, and stars Lewis Pullman, Mackenzie Lee, and William Sadler. The story focuses on a writer who returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration, only to discover the presence of a vampire. Okay, so this movie isn't perfect. This isn't as high up on my recommendation list as some of these other ones have been, because I do have some issues with it. But overall, I was entertained, and I do think it's worth watching. The things I really enjoyed about it is the look of it, the style of it, the costume design, the set design. I mean, it is gorgeous, and it really feels like Halloween time of year. It feels nostalgic. It has that creepy, old school kind of vibe to it, and I love that element about this. I also enjoyed a lot of the changes that were made. I do like the fact that they added kind of more of a vampire feel to this than, say, the early miniseries back in the 70s. You know, there's a lot of things I did like as far as the structure and the way the story is presented this time around. And I watched this with an open mind, because if you compare it to the more modern miniseries or the original one, I don't think it's gonna hold up. You can't do that. You gotta watch things with a fresh perspective and enjoy them for what they are and not for what they're not, because movies are rarely gonna hold up to that standard, especially if you have nostalgia and things like that for another movie. But just on its own, the issues I had with it is the whole thing feels kind of stilted. It feels overly controlled. It feels like every line delivery, every single thing in it has to be perfect. There's no room for error, which gives it not a lot of character and not personality. And so it's really hard for me to get into at times because it just feels too manufactured. And it's hard to even put a finger on exactly what that means, but it just didn't have, like I said, enough character and soul and uniqueness to it. And so without that character, it just felt a little bit too manufactured for me. But I did enjoy myself, so I do think it's entertaining. And even if it's just to be a part of the conversation, I think you should definitely check this out, especially if you have HBO Max right now. Maxxxine is a 2024 slasher horror movie. Written and directed by Ty West, it's the third film in the X film series and stars Mia Goth, Kevin Bacon, and Carlos Esposito. It follows Maxxxine, who was the lone survivor of the bloody incidents from X, as she continues her journey towards fame to be an actress in 1980s Los Angeles.
Name 5 celebrities who got their start in horror movies.
Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta, Demi Moore, Brooke Shields, and
Maxxxine fucking Minx.
I loved this movie, I really did, and I also expected it to be very divisive and people be torn, because I know a lot of people were not happy with it, as well as I know a lot of people that loved it. So I get that, because this isn't X and it isn't Pearl, it is its own thing, which is what I expected, because Ty West doesn't really redo movies. Like, X and Pearl were very different from each other. So I don't really know why people expected this to be something other than different like it is. It is a strange movie. It's off the wall. There is strange humor to it. It has this weird cop detective 1980s feel to a lot of it. It definitely feels more thriller than horror, which is something I think a lot of people were disappointed in as well, because a lot of people wanted to see another X. They wanted to see another bloodbath, and that's just not what this is, and it's not what they were trying to go for. But it's so colorful, it's so well shot. It was really great to see Ty West get to have a budget and make a movie that feels so grand like this movie does. And so I was just able to enjoy this as a character study of this character of Maxxxine and what she goes through, and how each movie kind of defines this different version of kind of a similar character. And as much as the final act of this lost a lot of people, I loved it. I thought it was great, because you gotta realize that you're seeing this movie through the eyes of Maxxxine. So everything isn't exactly as it appears to be at times. The way we saw with Pearl, like the things that happen are not always exactly the way they appear. So if you haven't seen this, I recommend checking it out and making up your own mind. It does drop on Max on the 18th of October, so it'll be a lot more accessible now for everybody to see.
How a human can do that? My answer is simple. Telling Gwynnick, by the mere definition of the word, is a werewolf.
Whirr is a 2013 psychological creature feature horror movie. Directed by William Brent Bell, it stars AJ Cook, Brian Scott O'Connor, and Sebastian Roche. In France, an American attorney defends a murder suspect who has a brutish appearance and a deadly secret.
There is no factual evidence to indicate anything more than an animal attack.
At 1452, we apprehended the suspect.
The man accused of these crimes, one Talon Gwynnick.
I'm just such a big fan of this movie. For one, I love creature features. It's probably my favorite subgenre of horror, or at least one of them. And this is so unique. It is like this hodgepodge of different kinds of horror smashed together. And I'm trying to dance around it because I don't want to give it away, because this movie is so worth your time, especially if you go into it not knowing the twists and turns that it takes. But it's surprising, it's well shot, well directed, the cast is great, it looks fantastic. It's shot in a lot of different ways, and you're seeing the incidents through a lot of different camera styles, which gives it a really cool feel to it as well. Unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere that I could find at the time, but it is a rental for a few dollars, and so I think it's definitely worth renting if you haven't seen this. Raw is a 2016 French-Belgian psychological horror movie. Written and directed by Julia Ducournau. It stars Garance Millier, Ella Rumpf, and Rabbi Nate Alfala. The plot follows a young vegetarian's first year at veterinary school, where she tastes meat for the first time and develops a craving for flesh. This is such a beautifully strange, well-done film. It's done by the same filmmaker that did Titane a couple years ago, and that movie blew a lot of us away, but this was her first movie, and it's just as creative, just as artistic, just as dark and uncomfortable and gruesome and strange. It's just so many things, which is what makes Julia Ducournau such an amazing filmmaker. But this keeps you uncomfortable the entire runtime. It goes in a bunch of different weird directions, keeps you off kilter and never really knowing what to expect next. But I think it's a phenomenal movie and definitely worth spending a couple dollars to rent.
Horror unleashed by the daring of man and a dangerous experiment of science.
I have burned away the outer scale. There's a structure of human skin underneath it.
The Creature Walks Among Us.
The Creature Walks Among Us is a 1956 creature feature horror movie. It's the third installment of the Creature from the Black Lagoon series from Universal Pictures. Directed by John Sherwood, it stars Rex Reason, Lee Snowden, and Don Megawin. When scientists capture the creature, they turn him into an air breather, only for him to escape and start killing.
Now a monster made even more frightful by human emotion.
This is one of the Universal classics that's just not talked about. Like a lot of the Universal movies, there's so many sequels that people just don't really talk about. Like the sequels to The Mummy, to The Wolfman, to Frankenstein, to The Creature in the Black Lagoon. There's all these sequels that just don't get love, and I get it, because a lot of them were just kind of regurgitating the same thing that the original did in just slightly different packaged ways, but this one's very different. The soul of this movie feels very different to me. The way the creature looks, because when he becomes an air breather, he's more human looking, but still not. And where this goes, and the message of this movie, and the way they talk about what man is doing to nature, and you know, this cautionary story kind of thing, I really appreciate, and I've always really enjoyed about this movie. So if you've never seen this wonderful classic, I think you should definitely go over to Peacock and check it out.
That was really sticky.
He was licking me!
Ravenous.
Ravenous is a 1999 period horror movie. Directed by Antonia Bird, it stars Guy Pearce, Robert Carlyle, and Jeffrey Jones. In a remote military outpost in the 19th century, Captain John Boyd and his regiment embark on a rescue mission, which takes a dark turn when they are ambushed by a sadistic cannibal.
It's an old Indian myth from the north.
Man eats the flesh of another. He absorbs the other man's strength.
So I just found out while I was putting this list together that this movie is available for free streaming on YouTube. And that made me so happy because I love this movie and I don't see it streaming enough, not on the major platforms anyway. And so for it to be free on YouTube, like, that's just awesome. But this is such a weird, quirky, uncomfortable at times, just strange. It's unique in a lot of different ways. Everything from the soundtrack to the characters and the way they're written, just the overall tone of it is very unique. But it's really well shot. The cinematography is gorgeous. It's well edited, well directed, just a fantastic movie. But it has a real bleak, black sense of humor to it. It's very uncomfortable, it's very twisted and disturbing. But if you enjoy cannibalistic, period Western horror movies, then this is one you definitely need to see.
Nothing wrong with being scared, Norman. As long as you don't let it change who you are.
ParaNorman.
ParaNorman is a 2012 animated comedy horror movie. Co-written and directed by Chris Butler. It's produced by Laika and stars Cody Smith-McPhee, Casey Affleck, Anna Kendrick, and John Goodman. A misunderstood boy takes on ghosts, zombies, and grown-ups to save his town from a centuries-old curse.
Gotta use your gift of talking to the dead to stop it.
This is crazy.
Do I look crazy to you?
So I rarely, if ever, put animated movies on here. But being that it's the Halloween season, and the fact that this is probably my all-time favorite animated horror, family-friendly kind of movie, I definitely had to put it on here. I just love the look, the style, the story, the way all this is put together, because as much as I enjoy other animated Halloween season creepy movies like Tim Burton stuff or whatever, they don't feel horror to me. This one does. There's something about the way this is put together, the look of it, the style of it, where it feels creepy. It feels like a horror movie. I'm not saying it's scary, but it still has that bones, like the real heart of a horror movie to it, at least in my opinion. And so I wanted to end this list on something fun, something that you could just kick your feet up with some popcorn, invite the whole family around and enjoy this weekend. And I just think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this holiday season, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And I want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or you can become a channel member and help the channel out that way by clicking on that join button down there. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 horror movies I highly recommend over on Shudder. And I'll see you guys next time.